Hi, my name's Aileen, and just 5 days ago, I thought I was dropping my parents off for a vacation in Europe. But 10 minutes later, my 6-year-old daughter whispered something that shattered everything I believed. Mom, we can't go home. I heard Grandma and Grandpa planning something bad for us. I thought she was imagining things. She wasn't, because when I checked our security camera, I saw my own mother standing at my mailbox, planting something. They didn't leave for Europe. They declared war. On me, on my child. And the worst part? They almost won. So before we begin, tell me, what time is it where you are? And have you ever felt hunted by your own family? Leave a comment, because what happened next will leave you questioning everything. I pulled up to the departure curb just after 9, the sun already working its way over the airport roofline. The morning should have felt ordinary, but my chest carried that familiar tightness I always got around my parents. I helped my mom with her suitcase while she kept talking in that careful tone she uses when she wants to sound pleasant, but still stay in control. Remember to water the plants twice a week, and don't forget the mailbox. And make sure the trash bins aren't left out too long. The neighbors talk. She listed those things like I were still 16. I nodded along, keeping my voice steady. My dad hovered a step behind her, quiet like always. His silence used to feel calming when I was a kid. Now it felt like a wall he used to stand behind while she handled the talking for both of them. Leora clung to my hand. She usually liked airports, but this morning she stayed pressed into my side. My mom bent down and squeezed her a little too long. We'll see you soon, sooner than you think. Her tone made me glance up. It wasn't playful, it had weight. But I brushed it off, telling myself she was just being dramatic again. We said our goodbyes, and I watched them roll their suitcases toward security. My dad didn't look back. My mom did, but only for a second, long enough to scan me the way she does when she's making sure I understood whatever message she thought she delivered. I walked Leora back to the garage, trying to shake off that odd feeling. We reached the car and she stopped short. Her fingers went straight to the little lavender pin on her backpack. She rubbed it with her thumb like she needed reassurance. "Mom," she whispered, "you said lavender means safety, right?" "Yeah," I said, pulling her door open for her. "Why?" She didn't answer. Her face had gone pale, and she backed away from the car instead of climbing in. "What is it, honey?" I crouched so I could see her eyes. She looked around the garage like someone might be listening. We can't go home." My whole body went still. "Why would you say that?" Her voice came out thin and shaky. "Grandma and Grandpa, they were talking last night in the hallway. They thought I was asleep. They said they're going to do something bad to us. They said someone's going to come to our house when you're not looking. We can't go back there." For a moment, the only sound was a car alarm chirping in the distance. I kept my face calm for her sake, but inside, something dropped. My parents weren't affectionate people, but something bad wasn't how Leora talked, unless she was scared for real. I helped her into the seat, buckled her in gently, then slid behind the wheel. I didn't start driving home. I pulled out of the garage and looped toward the far end of long-term parking, where hardly anyone goes in the middle of the morning. Only when we were tucked between two empty rows did I put the car in park. "Okay," I said softly. "Tell me exactly what you heard." She twisted the straps on her backpack. "I heard papers, like they were signing stuff, and Grandpa said it had to happen when you were gone. And Grandma said not to worry, that she had it handled, and then she said they needed someone to meet us at the house." My scalp prickled. I thought back over the last few weeks, her questions about my schedule, the sudden interest in my daycare choices, the way she kept bringing up custody laws like she was just curious. Things I'd waved off as her usual habits now felt different, like pieces of a picture I hadn't wanted to see. I reached for my phone to turn on the car's fan. A notification popped up before I touched anything. Security system. Front door opened. The breath left my lungs. My parents were in the air by now. No one should have been in that house. I looked at Leora. She shrank into her seat, holding that lavender pin like it was the only thing keeping her steady. I opened the security app with my hands shaking, despite how hard I tried to control it. "And when I checked the live camera feed," I said, barely above a whisper, I froze in my seat. Standing in my living room was a man I had never seen before, holding my house key. He wasn't dressed like a burglar, no mask, no gloves, no hurry in his movements. He wore a collared shirt tucked neatly into dark jeans, like he'd just come from work or church. He didn't creep, he strolled, confident, purposeful, like he belonged there. I zoomed in on the feed. He glanced around briefly, then walked directly toward the hallway, straight to the closet near the stairs. One I usually kept locked, but apparently it had been unlocked. My breath caught as I watched him open the door, lean in, and start shifting things around. He wasn't rifling or searching. He was retrieving. From the corner shelf, he pulled out a thick blue folder labeled Property Records. My name was written across it in black marker. I felt a slow, cold wave move through my chest. Who the hell was this man? And how did he know exactly where to look? I locked the car doors again, even though we were parked in an empty lot, far from the house. My fingers moved on instinct as I turned to Leora and said quietly, "Don't be scared. I'm right here. I've got you." She nodded, her eyes still glued to the screen, barely blinking. My head buzzed with questions, all crashing into each other. The front door had been unlocked using a code. The key in his hand. It looked just like the one I had. My parents had one, of course. A spare. Did they give it to him? Why? Was this a repairman? A real estate agent? Some kind of contractor? No. That didn't add up. No one walks into a stranger's home and knows where the most sensitive documents are kept unless they've been told or shown. And he didn't hesitate, not even once. My phone buzzed again. Another alert. Camera 3. Dining room motion detected. I tapped over. He'd moved through the hallway now, checking a drawer in the sideboard, and then calmly flipping open my laptop on the table. He typed something. I couldn't see what, but he didn't fumble. His hands moved like someone who knew his way around. It felt like watching someone rehearse for a scene they'd already memorized. "I don't like him," Leora whispered. "He's scary." I glanced down. "You don't know him either?" She shook her head. "But I heard them talk about him." My stomach flipped. "Grandma said, we'll get everything in place before she knows," she continued. "And Grandpa said, we'll move them quietly. It'll look like she agreed." My hand went still on the screen. "Are you sure, baby? That's exactly what you heard?" She looked up at me with that unblinking, too old for her age seriousness she sometimes had. "I was awake. I heard them." I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. The meaning of those words sank in like wet cement. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't overreaction. They weren't just planning something behind my back. They were setting something up. And they had help. I flipped through the camera views again. Upstairs, empty. Backyard, quiet. Then I noticed something that made my spine stiffen. The driveway, parked just across the street. My parents' car, still. It had been there at 10:46 p.m. last night. That's what the timestamp said. The lights were off and no one was visible. But they had been at my house the night before their flight. I never heard them. I never saw them. But they were there. They entered my house. I backed out of the camera feed and opened the home app. I scrolled through activity logs and froze when I spotted it. Guest access code enabled, 12:02 a.m. I hadn't done that. No one had permission to do that, except me and whoever had admin access to the system. My mother, She'd asked for it last year, just in case. I'd given it to her against my better judgment. I remember her saying, "It's not like I'd ever go in uninvited, honey. Don't be dramatic." But she had. And now this man was in my house, using a key I didn't give him, accessing documents he shouldn't even know existed. I wanted to throw my phone across the car. Instead, I set it down slowly and pressed both palms into my thighs to ground myself. "Think," I whispered to no one. "Think. If I called the police, what would I even say? A strange man was in my house, but with a key. No forced entry. And if they asked how he got in, I'd have to admit my parents had access, that they had the codes, the keys. It would be messy, and they were so good at spinning things, at sounding rational while making me look like the one who couldn't be trusted. They'd say I was overreacting, again, that I was emotional, that I was unstable. And if they brought up court, my heart slammed hard against my ribs. They couldn't take Leora. They couldn't twist this into something that would give them any sort of leverage. Not again. I turned to Leora and brushed the hair from her cheek. "Hey, sweetheart, you did so good telling me. I believe you, okay?" She nodded again, her little fingers still clenching that lavender pin like it was armor. I opened my notepad app and started listing every small thing that had happened in the past few weeks that hadn't seemed right. Mom offered to help reorganize the basement, just to declutter. Dad asked me for a copy of the water bill to compare rates. Mom kept pushing for Leora to stay over on weeknights, so I could rest. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now it looked like the prelude to something carefully arranged. Another buzz, another alert. Back door opened. I clicked back to the feed in a flash. The man was now stepping into the backyard, holding a phone to his ear. He paused near the garden, tilted his head, and started to speak. The audio wasn't clear. But as the wind carried part of his voice toward the backyard camera, I made out one word, one name. And when he said the name of the person on the phone, my blood ran cold. He said, "Yes, Carla, I'm inside now." My mother's name, casually spoken by a man I had never seen, inside my house, holding my key. I couldn't breathe for a moment. It was like someone reached through the screen and knocked the air out of my lungs. Leora stared at me, waiting. I must have looked pale because she reached out and touched my arm, her voice a whisper. "Mom, are you okay?" I nodded quickly, trying to pull myself together. I'm okay," I said again, more for myself than for her. But I wasn't, not even close. That man wasn't some random intruder. He was hired by her, by my own mother. Why? I turned the volume up, barely blinking. The man walked into the dining room, set the folder on the table, and pulled out papers like he was flipping through a menu. Then I heard him say, "I found the papers. Yes, both the custody forms and the transfer documents." Every muscle in my body tensed. My pulse spiked so fast, it drowned out every sound around me. Custody forms, transfer documents. No. They weren't just scheming behind my back. They were organizing a takeover of my life, of my child. I looked over at Leora. She was hugging her knees to her chest now, quiet, small. I leaned over and wrapped my arm around her, holding her tighter than I probably should have. I couldn't lose her. I wouldn't. I kept hearing their voices from earlier in my mind. My parents insisting I leave early to drop them off, that I stay at their house the night before, that I shouldn't drive back home to pack. "It's only a weekend bag," Carla had said, brushing off my hesitation. "We'll be late to the airport if we go back." It all seemed so convenient then, but now it was a setup. They needed me out of the house. They needed time. They wanted me distracted, and they were using my own trust to do it. "Mom," Leora whispered, her voice trembling. "There's more I heard." I turned toward her. She swallowed hard. Grandma said, "You don't make good decisions, and that if they don't act now, I'll grow up wrong." It took everything in me not to cry. Not because it hurt, which it did, but because of the quiet way Leora said it. Like she had been holding that line inside her, afraid it meant something about her. "They said that?" I asked. She nodded. "She said you don't think straight, and Grandpa said you act too emotional." I bit my lips so hard it stung. That line, too emotional. I'd heard it my whole life. It was their favorite excuse, a way to dismiss me, to control me. But now they were using it against me, using it to build a case. How long had they been planning this? How long had they been collecting pieces of my life, like evidence for a trial I didn't even know I was on? Suddenly, memories poured in. Quiet things I'd brushed off. Mom asking to tidy up my kitchen drawers and accidentally finding the overdue bill I hadn't opened yet. Dad asking for copies of Leora's vaccination records, just in case. Mom snapping photos of the living room after I had a long work week and toys were scattered everywhere. I joked, "You trying to blackmail me with these?" And she had laughed. Now I wasn't so sure. I opened my email, hands trembling. I typed legal into the search bar, then tried custody, transfer, and finally Capaldi. And there it was, an email I had never seen before, buried under promotions. Subject, appointment confirmed, guardianship consultation date, last week, time, Friday 10 a.m. Sender, a law office in town, CC, Carla Capaldi. I stared at it. There were no words for what I felt in that moment. Rage, grief, betrayal, none of it fit. She was trying to take my daughter, not help, not support. Take everything. I pressed the phone against my forehead and exhaled slowly. I wasn't crying. I was done crying. They had underestimated me. They thought I'd just collapse under the weight of their control, like I always had before. But not this time. Leora was the line they should have never crossed. I turned to her and said, calmly but clearly, "We're not going home today." She blinked. "Where will we go?" "I don't know yet," I said, honesty firm in my voice. "But we'll figure it out. Together." She leaned her head against my arm. "Okay." I glanced around the car. We had snacks, gas, my wallet, a few clothes in my overnight bag. It would have to be enough for now. I needed time, space. I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd done before I made my move. I unlocked my phone again and opened my location history app. Scrolled through the timeline, the house at 10 p.m., then midnight, then 3 a.m. And there it was, plain as day. Both their phones had been logged inside my house for nearly 3 hours. But then something else caught my eye. Another location pinged. Right after they left. Not the airport, not their house. A law office. Same one from the email. My thumb hovered over the address. And then I saw one more location. A place that made my heart slam against my ribs. Their phones had pinged at Child Protective Services. Not the grocery store, not a church, not some random office building, CPS. I sat completely still. The only movement was the vibration in my fingertips as they gripped the steering wheel. My whole chest tightened like a rubber band stretched too far. "Mom?" Leora's voice was quiet. "What's wrong?" I couldn't say it, not yet. I just reached over and took her hand, held it tightly. My own parents, walked into CPS. That was nuclear. It didn't matter how well you parented. Once someone made an official report, even a baseless one, it planted seeds that never fully went away. And they knew that. They'd spent years weaving this false sense of helpfulness. All those little moments started flooding in now, each one snapping into place like pieces of a puzzle I never agreed to play. Carla always commenting on how tired I looked. "You really should take better care of yourself," she'd say with that syrupy concern that never sounded quite sincere. Carmine asking if I'd updated Leora's emergency contacts at school. At the time, I'd thought, maybe he's just being cautious. But now, it felt like intel gathering, and the unannounced visits. Carla dropping by just to check on the house, then casually snapping photos of a messy counter, or Leora watching TV in pajamas at noon on a Saturday. "Just for the scrapbook," she'd say with a smirk. They were building a case long before I even saw it coming. I opened my phone again and searched for public records related to CPS. There was a portal, difficult to navigate, but with enough persistence and keyword guessing, I found it. One recent anonymous report stood out. Concern regarding child safety, unspecified emotional instability of custodial parent. Filed 2 days ago. Anonymous, of course, but I didn't need a signature to know whose fingerprints were all over it. Emotional instability. That's her favorite phrase. Always just vague enough to do damage. "Are we going home?" Leora asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, sweetheart," I said, starting the car. "We're going somewhere safe." I wasn't taking any chances. We couldn't be isolated. I couldn't be alone with my panic, or worse, have someone show up at the house while we were still out. I pulled out of the long-term lot and drove south, toward an area I knew well. A family cafe tucked beside a bookstore in South Austin, busy enough to feel safe, cameras, parents with kids, a place where my face wouldn't stick out. 20 minutes later, we were sitting at a corner table with warm croissants and bottled water. I kept the seat facing the door, eyes shifting every few seconds. Leora colored calmly with the crayons from her backpack, as if this were just another stop on a normal day. But my brain wouldn't stop. Emails, records, plans, paper trails. I opened my inbox again and searched custody. Another message popped up, from the same law office as before. "Your preliminary consultation file has been generated. Please bring all supporting documents." Then, one more line below that. "Custody and property evaluation will proceed together for efficiency." My breath caught. They weren't just trying to take Leora. They were going after everything. "Mom," Leora said, lowering her crayon. "I remembered something." I looked over at her. Her eyes didn't match her small voice. They were sharp, knowing. She'd seen too much in the last day to pretend otherwise. "Grandpa said, she won't be living there much longer anyway." The words hit me like a punch to the ribs. It was never just about Leora. They wanted the house, my life, my autonomy. This wasn't protection, it was takeover. I sat there, frozen for a few seconds. Then memory after memory poured in. Carmine asking to see a copy of my home insurance, saying he was helping with estate planning. Carla taking photos of the porch for memory's sake. Her sudden interest in my mortgage paperwork when she accidentally opened the wrong drawer and found my loan documents. They weren't planning for a vacation, they were planning my removal. I looked over at Leora again. Her face was tilted toward her sketchbook, but she wasn't drawing anymore. She was watching me, waiting to see what I'd do next. That's when I realized I couldn't fall apart. That's what they were counting on. For me to unravel, to lose control, to become the version of me they kept describing to everyone else. If I broke down now, I'd be giving them the ending they wrote without my consent. I leaned back, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. I could feel something shifting inside me. Not rage this time, not grief either. Clarity. I was going to get ahead of this, not by screaming, not by confronting them, not yet. I would gather proof, I would stay calm, I would write my narrative, and I would protect my daughter with everything I had left. Just as I felt my chest loosen for the first time in what felt like hours, My phone buzzed again. A camera alert. I tapped it open. Unknown vehicle parked in your driveway. I froze, then tapped into the video feed. Someone stepped out of the driver's seat, and when I recognized who it was, my entire body went rigid. It was a CPS caseworker, walking straight toward my front door. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and throat. I felt it. The exact second reality changed. There was no more pretending. No more, maybe this is all in my head. This was real. On my phone screen, the woman moved with measured steps, businesslike, clipboard in hand. Her hair was pulled back, expression unreadable, like she did this every day, like my house was just another line item in her schedule. She knocked once, then again a little firmer. I couldn't breathe. My hands clutched the table's edge. Leora kept coloring, humming to herself, unaware of the hurricane blowing just outside her world. Through the video feed, I saw the woman take out a business card and tuck it between the doorframe and the jamb. Then she wrote something on her clipboard, brief, efficient. And then, God help me, she tried the doorknob. I nearly dropped the phone. It was locked. Thank God it was locked. But watching her hand twist that handle, it felt like watching someone try to open me, my home, my last sense of control. A new notification buzzed in right as I was about to close the camera feed. Voicemail. I tapped it open and held the phone to my ear. This is Child Protective Services. We're following up on a report concerning potential endangerment of minor Leora Silvers. Please contact us within 24 hours. The voice was calm, professional. The kind of calm that strips you bare because it doesn't match the panic inside your bones. Endangerment. My name. Leora's name. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was already in motion. I sat frozen in the middle of the cafe, surrounded by clinking silverware and idle conversation, while my entire world bent sideways. What did they tell them? What lies did they come up with? What kind of story do you have to invent to get someone like CPS to show up at a door unannounced on a Saturday morning? My face flushed hot, not from guilt, but from shame. A shame I didn't earn, but somehow still felt. I hadn't hurt my daughter. I hadn't endangered her. But someone, somewhere, had said I did. And that seed had sprouted into a stranger standing at my front step, clipboard in hand. My stomach twisted, bile rising. I stood up fast, muttering to Leora, "I'll be right back, sweetheart." She looked up from her drawing. "Mommy?" "I'm okay," I said, failing to sell it. I hurried outside, needing air, needing space, needing to not lose it in front of my daughter. The sunlight hit me like a slap. Bright, unfeeling. I staggered toward the parking lot behind the cafe, my knees wobbling. I made it to the car, leaned against the driver's side, and let my hands fall to my sides. My phone slipped through my fingers and clattered to the pavement. I let it stay there. I wanted to scream, to curl up, to disappear. Instead, I just stood there, shaking like a leaf in wind I couldn't see. Then, another buzz, another message. This time, a group text. From my parents. "Hope your day is peaceful. We'll talk soon about what's best for Leora." There was a photo attached. It was of my house, taken from the driver's seat of their car, angled toward my porch. The timestamp said it was taken 10 minutes after I dropped them off at the airport. They lied. They never left. They went straight back. Probably watched the CPS worker arrive. Probably smiled. I dropped to the driver's seat. The kind of drop where your body gives up and gravity takes over. I wasn't just crying. I was breaking. No sounds came out. Just breathless sobs and hot tears I couldn't control. I didn't care who saw. I didn't care if anyone passed by. They raised me. They fed me. They bathed me as a child. And now they were tearing me apart from the inside out. And somewhere a voice inside me answered. Because they never saw you as grown, just as theirs. I don't know how long I stayed there. It could have been 2 minutes or 20. At some point, the sobs stopped. Or maybe they ran out of power. I wiped my face with my sleeve, took a slow, deliberate breath. Then another. My fingers, once trembling, finally stilled. I thought about Leora, sitting just inside that cafe, drawing with a pack of crayons, probably wondering why her mother walked out and didn't come back right away. She didn't need a shell of a woman. She didn't need me unraveling. She needed someone who could see through the smoke and grab the wheel. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red, cheeks splotched, but there was something else, something new forming just behind the mess. Resolve. I picked up my phone, stared at the message again, read the line one more time. We'll talk soon about what's best for Leora. No, I thought. You don't get to decide that. Not anymore. I stepped out of the car and shut the door behind me. And right before I reached the cafe door again, I whispered under my breath, "They think I'm fragile. They think I'm weak. Watch me." I pushed the door open. The cafe was as I left it. Soft music playing, the espresso machine humming, laughter rising from a table of teenagers across the room. Leora was still at our table, hunched over her paper. But something had changed. She wasn't coloring anymore. She was holding something, a small white card. She looked up as I approached. "Mom," she said, "a lady gave this to me when you were outside." I took the card from her slowly, a chill already creeping down my back. It was a business card, and when I read the name printed on it, my heart nearly stopped. It was the CPS investigator assigned to my case. The name on the card stared back at me like it had claws. Marcy Haldren, Child Protective Services, Case Review Division. My chest tightened. She wasn't just passing by. She wasn't sent by mistake. She was already watching. I turned the card over, half expecting a hidden message or some kind of personal note. But it was blank, clean, clinical, cold. Leora watched me closely. Her little hands still held the crayons she'd been using, but she wasn't coloring anymore. Her voice came out soft, like she knew something had shifted. "She just told me to give that to you," she said. She smiled, but it didn't feel like a nice smile. I knelt down to her level, brushing hair from her cheek. "You did the right thing, baby. Thank you for giving it to me." But inside, I was seething. Someone approached my child without permission, alone, in a public place. That wasn't just out of line. It was a calculated scare tactic. I was about to tuck the card away when my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but I did. "Aileen Silvers?" The voice was clipped, controlled, a little too practiced. "Yes?" "This is Marcy Haldren from Child Protective Services. We attempted a home visit this morning. I'm following up to speak with you and your daughter. It's important that we talk today." There was that word, today, short, sharp, like a corner you don't see until you hit it. I kept my voice even. "I'm not home. My daughter is safe. I'll be contacting an attorney before any meeting." Marcy didn't miss a beat. Failure to cooperate may be viewed negatively in our assessment. There it was, the polite threat. I repeated more firmly this time, "I will contact an attorney first." I hung up before she could say anything else. My hand shook, but my voice hadn't. And that small fact gave me a shred of strength I hadn't felt in days. I looked around the cafe. Suddenly the room felt smaller, the corners tighter. Too many eyes, too many exits, too much vulnerability. I needed to move, somewhere quieter, more neutral. Somewhere she couldn't just walk up to Leora again. I told Leora we were heading out, and she slipped her crayons into her backpack without a word. She knew I wasn't in the mood for questions. We walked to the car, buckled in, and I drove, deliberately, south, toward a small public library I remembered from years ago. It was never too crowded, plenty of cameras, public enough to feel safe, private enough to think. 15 minutes later, I pulled into a spot shaded by an old oak tree. The sun was higher now, but the day felt heavier. As I put the car in park, my phone buzzed again. Email, subject line, "We need to talk before things get worse." It was from my mother's address. My father's was CC'd. "We love you, but you're not thinking clearly. We'll talk once CPS finishes their part. Don't make this harder." There was an attachment. I opened it with a pit in my stomach. It was a scanned copy of an old medical report from 6 years ago. Postpartum depression. Notes from a therapist I'd only seen twice. A file I hadn't thought about in years. My own parents had kept it, held onto it, and now they were using it. I blinked hard, but the tears still came. This was no longer about concern. It wasn't about helping me or protecting Leora. It was control. Full, strategic, weaponized control. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, and let the emotion burn itself out. "They're using my darkest moments as evidence," I whispered. I thought of the CPS call, the visit, the staged friendliness, the credible report, and now this. They were building a wall around me, one brick at a time. But here's the thing about walls. They leave shadows, and every shadow tells a story. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. My fingers moved faster than my thoughts. Man inside the house, captured on indoor cam anonymous CPS report, emotional instability, airport drop-off timing, manipulated CPS visit voicemail from Marcy Holdren group text with photo of my house, scanned medical report from Carla, verbal statement from Leora about being approached in public. I took screenshots of everything, saved the voicemails, sent them to a hidden encrypted folder in the cloud. Every threat they used, I was now holding onto in reverse. I looked down at the timeline I'd created, and something clicked. Their phones pinged at the law office after leaving my house. That was the same morning I'd flown out. If I could get neighborhood camera footage, like Ring doorbells, maybe I could prove they entered without my consent. Maybe I could show they staged the home to appear unstable. Maybe I could prove intent. My fingers moved again, drafting a message to a lawyer I'd found earlier but hadn't contacted. Right as I was typing the final sentence, another alert came through. Camera feed. Motion at front door. I tapped the notification, expecting another stranger, maybe another follow-up from CPS. But when the figure stepped into the frame, I knew them. Not a stranger, not a caseworker. Familiar, close. And when the figure turned toward the camera, I felt my breath catch in my throat. It was my mother, standing right in front of my house, digging through my mailbox like it belonged to her. Her movements were slow, precise, too careful to be casual. She wasn't looking for a letter, she was planting something. I tapped the screen to zoom in. The camera feed sharpened enough to show her slipping an envelope inside, glancing over her shoulder, calm, composed, like she'd done it a dozen times before. Next to me in the car, Leora squinted at the screen. "Is Grandma coming to visit?" My heart twisted. "No, honey," I murmured. "She shouldn't be there." I kept watching. My fingers clenched around the phone. Then another figure entered the frame. Carmine. He walked up casually, like it was a Sunday stroll. They exchanged a few words. He handed her a second envelope. Without hesitation, she opened the mailbox again and slid it in, right on top of the first. They didn't look like family. They looked like co-conspirators. I hit record, captured the live feed, timestamp, location. My own breath was steady, but only because I forced it to be. "You want a war?" I whispered to myself. "Fine, but it won't go the way you think." This wasn't defense anymore. This was a counterattack. I opened the car door. "Let's go inside for a bit, sweetie." Inside the library, I found a quiet study room at the back and locked the door behind us. Leora settled in with her crayons and a stack of blank printer paper. Her world was still colorful. I was determined to keep it that way. I pulled out my laptop and began uploading everything. Video feed, screenshots, the earlier texts, the email, even that scanned medical report from years ago. All of it went into a secure cloud folder marked Legal Record, Personal Defense. Halfway through, a new email pinged. Subject, Second Attempted Visit. Follow-up required. I clicked. We attempted to contact the child's grandmother at the home. She expressed concern for your mental state and urged us to expedite our investigation. My pulse spiked so hard I felt it in my jaw. My own mother, who trespassed, planted evidence, colluded with my father, was now the voice of reason to CPS. She had painted me unstable while standing on my porch like she owned it. This wasn't concern, it was character assassination. But I didn't cry, not this time. I leaned back in the chair, let the fury roll through me like a wave. Then I stood, steadier than I'd been all week. They're doing what they've always done, I thought. Rewrite the story, control the narrative, turn my pain into their weapon. But they forgot one thing, I'm not 16 anymore. I texted the only person I knew would believe me without hesitation, Nerida Sloan. She'd been my friend through Leora's early years. She knew me before all of this, before the unraveling. I need a place to stay for a few hours, I wrote, preferably with cameras and witnesses. Her reply came fast. Come now, I'm home. Before leaving, I stopped by the front desk and asked to use the printer. I printed the CPS email. Then I printed the stills from the mailbox footage, 4 crisp pages. I tucked them into a manila folder I labeled with black ink. Document A, for legal use. As we walked back to the car, Leora hummed a quiet tune, skipping beside me. That sound, the ordinary joy of a child, grounded me, reminded me what this was really about. I buckled her in, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The sky was turning overcast now, as if the world outside finally matched what I felt inside. As I pulled onto the main road, my phone lit up again. Text from Carla. Where are you? Why didn't you answer my calls? You're letting your imagination run wild. All this will be over once CPS clarifies the situation. Then one from Carmine. You're scaring your daughter. You need help. You should come back before this escalates further. Every message was coded in false concern. But underneath I could hear the old tone. Control, condescension, manipulation. I stared at the screen, then typed 3 lines. I saw the mailbox. I saved everything. Do not contact me again. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to beg. Truth doesn't need volume. We drove in silence for the next 10 minutes, winding through old streets lined with leafless trees. When I turned onto Nerida's street, her porch light was already on. I parked, took a breath, and reached for the folder. Before I could knock, the door opened. Nerida stood there, pale, eyes wide. I just got a call from someone asking about you, she said quietly. They said you might be dangerous. And the moment she described the voice, I felt the world tilt under my feet. It was my mother's voice, I said, though I already knew it before the words left my mouth. Nerida nodded slowly. She introduced herself as Carla Michaels, said you were in some kind of mental spiral and might show up here acting violent. I hung up, but it scared me, Aileen. My mother had used a fake last name, a new identity just for lying. That alone told me how far she was willing to go. I pulled air deep into my chest and held it for a beat. I couldn't fall apart now. Not with Leora standing right beside me, clutching my sleeve like she could feel the storm building. I knelt and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. You're safe. I'm right here, sweetheart. She nodded, trusting me completely. That trust anchored me in place. kept me from slipping into the panic my parents were trying to shove me into. I straightened and glanced at my phone. 3 new emails from CPS glowed on the screen. Urgent review required concerns regarding home environment. Temporary safety assessment pending. The language was clinical, cold, but I knew the source of the accusations pulsing beneath each line. My parents had been busy, calling, filing, whispering, constructing a narrative where I wasn't fit to raise my own child. My jaw tightened. They wanted to bury me under paperwork and fear. I wasn't giving them either. I stepped into Nerida's living room and hit the CPS callback number. After a short wait, the investigator answered. Their voice was neutral, practiced. "Yes, Ms. Rollins, I'm assigned to your file." I forced my tone steady. "I have evidence you need to see. Timestamps, footage of people placing items in my mailbox, proof of false reports and harassment. I'm sending everything now." There was a long pause. Then, "All right, please upload it." I stood by the dining table, sending the files one by one. Live feed screenshots, recorded video, the email from my parents with the old medical report, the texts, the voicemails. My entire world turned into digital proof. When the final upload finished, the line went quiet for several seconds. Finally, the investigator spoke. "Ms. Rollins, thank you. This changes things." My throat tightened. Someone believed me. Finally, someone saw what I'd been living through, without me having to justify my sanity. "We will need an in-person follow-up," they continued. "But take your time. Your mother's statements do not align with the evidence." I closed my eyes, letting that sink in. Not relief, exactly, but a shift. A crack in the impossible wall I'd been pounding on. Before I could breathe again, Nerida's voice shot through the kitchen. "Aileen, come here, right now." I hurried in. She pointed to her home security monitor, her hand trembling. Outside, parked across the street, was my mother's car. And then my father stepped out of the passenger side. They stood still, scanning the area like they were hunting for a lost pet. Except I knew they weren't searching. They were tracking. "They followed you," Nerida whispered. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to my neighbor back home. "If you see my parents near Nerida's house, call the police immediately." Then the camera feed flickered. My mother had started walking toward the house. Her knock echoed through the walls, firm and rehearsed. Another knock, louder. I tucked Leora behind me in the hallway, close enough to feel her breath on my back. Nerida cracked the door open just an inch. "Can I help you?" she asked, polite but stiff. Carla smiled the kind of smile she used on PTA committees and church groups. Too sweet to be real. "Hello, dear. Is Aileen here? We're very worried about her mental state. We're trying to bring her home." I covered Leora's ears. That lie was designed to hurt, designed to spread. Nerida didn't move. "She's not here, and you need to leave." My mother's expression tightened. "Do you know what she's capable of? She could hurt the child. You don't understand the situation." Something inside me snapped. Not like a break, but like a line drawn in concrete. I stepped forward until my silhouette was visible through the crack in the door. "You're done speaking for me." My mother froze. My father shifted behind her, caught between shock and anger. "You planted things in my mailbox," I said, my voice low but unmistakably firm. "You lied to CPS, and I have everything recorded." Color drained from her face. Her lips parted, searching for the next manipulation. "You're imagining things." "No," I cut in. "This time, the truth speaks louder than you ever could." I lifted my phone slightly, still recording. Behind her, my father raised his chin. "Think carefully," he warned. "You don't want to start something you can't finish." I met his stare without blinking. "I already finished it the moment I saved the footage." The hallway went silent. The tension was a thick rope stretched between us. Nerida pushed the door shut, hard. The lock clicked. My mother's palms slapped the wood once more before my father dragged her away. Their footsteps crunched down the path. Their car doors slammed. The engine growled. Leora wrapped her arms around my leg, pressing her cheek into me. Nerida whispered, "They're terrified now." I whispered back, "They should be." A few minutes passed before I stepped outside to the small backyard for air. The sky was darker now, clouds collecting low. But the air felt different, like I had room to breathe again. For the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't cornered. I wasn't silent, I wasn't alone, and I wasn't powerless. My phone vibrated. New email, CPS case update. Immediate action required. Then a second notification appeared. Voicemail from Carmine Rowlands. Transcription available. "You think you won? You have no idea what's coming next." My hands tightened around the phone. And when I pressed play on that voicemail, I realized they were about to cross a line they could never come back from. The words left my mind before I fully understood them. I stood there in Nerida's backyard, holding my phone like it was something dangerous. The sky had turned a muted gray, heavy, but not quite raining. Leora was in the grass, tossing a ball for Nerida's old terrier, blissfully unaware of the shift happening in the air around her. I pressed play. My father's voice came through sharp, furious, not even trying to hide. "We should have done this months ago. She never listens unless you destroy everything she has." I felt my stomach hollow. He wasn't angry about what they'd done. He was angry it hadn't worked quickly enough. He went on, careless. "The CPS thing would have worked if you didn't rush the plan." That sentence wasn't a threat. It was a confession. Then my mother's voice, faint but unmistakable, floated up behind him. "She'll come crawling back. They always come back if you take their child first." I paused the voicemail before the rest spilled out. My throat burned. It wasn't just anger. It was the grief of finally seeing the truth without any disguise. They didn't want to help me. They didn't want to fix anything. They wanted power, the kind they'd had over me when I was barely old enough to defend myself. I hit forward and sent the voicemail to the CPS investigator. My message was short. "Here is the final piece." The reply came within a minute. "Do not return home. Police are being dispatched to your address." For a second, I just stared at the screen. After all the fear, all the humiliation, all the gaslighting, they finally believed me. I closed my eyes and let the relief settle just a little, like a warm hand at the center of my chest. Within 15 minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled into Nerida's driveway. The lights weren't flashing, but the presence of uniforms washed the whole house in a strange kind of calm. I opened the door with my folder already in hand. One of the officers, a woman with steady eyes, met my gaze. "We've been briefed. You did the right thing coming forward." Those words felt like a life jacket thrown to someone who had been treading water for far too long. They asked me to walk them through everything, and I did. I laid it all out plainly. The envelopes, the false reports, the staged scenes, the stalking, the manipulation, the years of quiet conditioning that made it so easy for my parents to assume I'd fold. Leora sat quietly on Nerida's couch, hugging her stuffed turtle. She watched me with wide eyes, trusting that whatever I was doing was for her. When the officers left for my house, I stayed behind. I didn't want to see my parents, not yet. I didn't want to give them the chance to twist my words or use my presence as a weapon. I let the professionals handle it. A message buzzed on my phone. My neighbor. A photo, my parents on my porch, speaking to the police. Then another photo, my father pointing at my house with an agitated expression, my mother pretending to wipe tears. And then the last photo, officers stepping inside while my parents stood on the lawn, not invited, not in control. I sat down beside Nerida, who placed a warm cup of tea in my hands. "You're doing everything right," she said quietly. My phone rang again. CPS. The investigator's voice was firmer this time. "Ms. Rowlands, we finished reviewing your evidence. You were the victim of deliberate manipulation. The reports made against you were coordinated and malicious. We're closing their claims immediately and opening a case regarding their actions." I exhaled, slow, careful, like I was afraid the moment would shatter if I breathed too quickly. "Thank you," I managed. Not long after, the police returned with updates. "Carla denied everything," the officer said. "Carmine tried to shift blame onto you, but the voicemail and videos contradict their statements entirely." He paused, lowering his voice. "They targeted you with intent. This will not be ignored." I nodded. My hands were steady for the first time all day. Later that afternoon, after the officers left and Nerida fixed lunch for all of us, Leora climbed into my lap with that quiet confidence children have when they sense peace returning. "Mom, can we go home now?" she asked softly. I brushed her hair back and kissed her forehead. "Yes, but not because they want us there, because we're safe to go home." We packed up slowly. I thanked Nerida, hugged her tighter than I ever had, and promised to keep her updated. The drive back felt surreal, like the end of a storm where the clouds haven't quite broken, but the worst has clearly passed. When I pulled into my driveway, the sun was dipping toward the horizon. The mailbox leaned slightly, crooked from my mother's earlier intrusion. I walked over, opened it, and found one of the planted envelopes still inside. I held it for a long moment, then slid it into a plastic evidence bag, labeled, "Do not discard." This wasn't fear anymore. It was proof. Proof of what they'd done. And proof that I had survived it. As I turned toward the yard, something small caught my eye. A single garden glove, half hidden in the grass. The same one I dropped that frantic morning before rushing to the airport. Back then, it symbolized the beginning of chaos. Now it meant something else entirely. I came back, I survived, I reclaimed what was mine. Inside the house, I locked the door carefully, checked the windows, and turned the porch light on. Everything felt familiar, yet different, like the home had been holding its breath and finally let it out. Leora curled up on the couch beside me, her head on my lap, drifting to sleep while I stroked her hair. I glanced around the living room, letting the quiet sink into my bones. "This home is ours," I whispered. "Not theirs to take. Not anymore." I leaned back, feeling the weight of the past few days lift just enough for me to breathe fully again. Some battles aren't loud. Some don't end with shouting or apologies. Sometimes victory is simply stepping back into a space they tried to steal from you, and knowing you won't let them again. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without fear.